For those of you who are joining us for the first time or are new to the Tech Council, the San Francisco Tech Council is a multi-sector initiative, and we build government, business, nonprofit, and consumer collaboration to advance digital inclusion for seniors and adults with disabilities in San Francisco so all can participate in the city's connected community. We also have Chris Brereton, who's a partner and head of product at Sidebench, which is an award-winning digital innovation lab and startup venture studio. So as an organization certified by the International Association of Accessibility Professionals, Sidebench champions the value of accessible design and strives to implement universal design principles throughout the work.
Great to meet you guys. Thanks for including us. Speaking of inclusive, we feel honored to be involved in the group, and thanks for giving us some time. Cool. My name is Chris. It's great to meet you guys. I'm a partner and the vice president of product here at Sidebench, and I oversee the product design and engineering teams for Sidebench. Quickly about Sidebench, where I work and am a partner. Sidebench is an award-winning product and innovation venture studio. We design and build products for really awesome organizations all around the world. And we feel excited to be sort of this like secret weapon, secret sauce for many of these companies. Here's a handful of those companies and logos you might recognize. You'll see CHLA on there, which I feel particularly passionate about. We're doing quite a bit of work with, as well as Children's Miracle Network. So when we talk about inclusive product design, we get to play in that space quite a bit. This is sort of the humble brag slide that I always feel weird presenting. Basically, all this is saying is we win lots of awards for a lot of the work we do. It's pretty great to be able to have these things, but it also feels uncomfortable to talk about them. So I'm going to keep moving and move on to what we believe at Sidebench. We believe inclusive product design is responsible product design. What that means to us is when we're working with any of the organizations that we work with, whether the nonprofit side, the city government side, or Fortune Plus companies, we're always trying to bring this perspective to the table from the beginning, from the onset of a product design experience. And we think inclusive product design is really much more than just accessibility. So many of you guys may be familiar with 508 compliance or the ADA standards. That is just the beginning of inclusive product design in our mind. We think it really means enabling people with diverse needs and characteristics to participate in your product or your business, wherever they are in their walk in life, in their sort of community that they might belong to with their certain disabilities. It's really trying to understand the person first, or the people or segments of people that these products interact with, and making sure that the product is accessible and also addresses their particular needs. We also think product design is a win-win for both the customer and the businesses. We think when you start to account for these different communities that many products overlook, you actually open up the market quite a bit. So it creates more reach, it gives you more access to information that allows you to improve your products in a way you maybe never would have considered prior to including these communities. But let's say you're one of these big Fortune 500 or greater companies. It's also just good for your wallet. Many companies are now being actively targeted and sued for not meeting standards of 508 compliance or ADA standards. There's a large case, I think, started in 2016 around Domino's Pizza and a blind man who was unable to order food using their website and their screen readers that cost Domino's quite a bit of money and made them rethink their whole design process. So even if you're not being sort of a leading edge company and caring about the social responsibility of the products and services you bring to market, and you only care about money, there's still a really good reason to pay attention. So noted in sort of the introduction here is this isn't something you should think about after you've released your product. We believe product design and inclusive product design starts way at the beginning. So we start in our discovery process with including this thinking. So I'll run through this quickly, and I'm happy to share these slides after or answer any questions either here or on email. But really quickly thinking about our discovery process, there's 4 key stages. This is a double diamonds process you guys might be familiar with, but discover, define, develop, and deliver. In each of these moments, we're actually sort of checking in on where we're at in the process, and also finding ways to include inclusiveness into our process. So The top of the diamonds, you'll see sort of the typical design thinking process. Below that is our sort of anecdote to how we think about inclusion in the process. So when we're first understanding the people, the problems, the context, the potential of the solutions we want to create, we're also thinking about focusing on the gaps in the people with disabilities or abilities that may change the way we want to address a particular audience or audiences. As we move to the right and we're defining the product experience, we're summarizing goals and direction and the design concepts, yes, but we're also defining the impacts for the people, planet, and profit that we're trying to create with this particular experience. As we develop those ideas into more and stable, longer-term opportunities, yes, we're exploring what those things could be, but we're also ideating on how to apply things like 508 standards to while also maintaining the design direction. A lot of times, there may be shortcuts to doing ADA or 508 compliance solutions in design that are also sort of off-brand or don't support the company's mission or vision for how they want to be perceived. And there are creative ways that we can find in the process to help address that if we pay attention early. And then lastly, as we work to deliver a product experience, we want to evaluate whether or not the product is as inclusive as we thought it was. So this is really the end of shipping something to market, but getting the feedback once it's in market, whether or not we hit the mark. And that we think is a super important component to the process for us. So again, real quick, just to bang through this: discover, define, develop, deliver. Each of those stages has a moment in time where we're really checking in on how we're building inclusivity into our product design. And as mentioned also at the top of this call, there's challenges that we all face when we're thinking about these things. We, as a product and innovation studio, run into them often. Our three main buckets of problems in the space are really related to education, priorities, and budgets. So the way we think about these things or sort of work toward them is by participating in groups like this. So thank you guys at SF Tech Council for including us. There's also a group in Portland called the Digital Inclusion Network that are really focused on educating the market and helping people understand that this is something that should be prioritized, which leads to priorities. A lot of companies, when they're thinking about their next product or service or the way they're going to address a new market, don't really think too much about the diversity or inclusion of how those things are going to affect those spaces. And I don't think that's really for a lack of care or concern or any ill will. I think it rolls back up to that top problem of education. And then lastly, to the 80-20 rule of it would be the dream to make a product work for every single person of all shapes, sizes, and challenges. That isn't always feasible. And when it's not feasible, it definitely costs more money to do so. And even when it is feasible, it definitely takes more thought, more time, more user interviews, more different groups that we get feedback from. And that adds to budgets for these things, which a lot of times corporations don't think much about when they're scoping what they can spend on these things. But we love to help companies prioritize this stuff. And we think it really makes for better products, better experiences, and better world at the end of the day. This is just a very select few companies we've spent quite a bit of time on sharing these practices and helping them think about how to improve their processes to include this type of design thinking. And we'll touch on the first two on the left real quick, just to give you an example. So County of LA, my hometown, and a project that actually started from a hackathon that I did for foster children turned into be a long-term project for us. The Pritzker Family Foundation and the city have both sort of funded together to help children in the foster care system. I won't bother reading through all these things. I can send you guys the slides after, but the spirit of this engagement and the different types of users were a really big challenge for both the city and for us as a design shop. The goal is really family reunification. Family reunification for foster kids is very challenging in LA because of how big and disparate our city is down here. Many people are in different places, including the parents, the foster care employees, and as well as the foster families and the children. The children often get separated if they're in groups, so brothers and sisters may be on different sides of town. Mom and dad may be separated in different parts of the city, and the caseworkers may also be in different offices scattered around LA. All of those people somehow have to coordinate to get to the same place to have these family visitations that are documented and shared with the court system. When those visitations happen, that is the way the kids can maybe be reunited with their families. And we built a platform that allows the city to connect with the caseworkers to connect with the parents, and oftentimes teenage kids as well use this system. So when we thought about inclusive design, we really had to consider many different types of users in many different contexts. And this has been a very successful product for the city. So just in the first release, it's been a huge cost savings, and this comes from two different buckets. And this is how we can justify some of the work that we do. So we're reducing the amount of work the caseworkers do. We're reducing the amount of turnover that the caseworkers sort of join and leave, because this job is very, very challenging. And we've also increased the likelihood of reunification significantly, and that's turned into that massive number you see on the screen there. So that was one of our fun, inclusive product design projects that is still going today and will continue for another, looks like 2 years. Another organization that we work really closely with and again affect many, many different users with different disabilities is a company called Cortica. These guys are headquartered down in San Diego, California. And they're really unifying the autism care journey. The autism care journey for kids and families who have autism is massively challenging. Typical child with autism has to have something like 23 different types of therapies. Those 23 different types of therapies come from 20 plus different types of providers. All of those things have to be approved by an insurance company to pay for said treatments and then scheduled with all of those providers. You can imagine what a nightmare that must be. This company, Cortica, for a long time was doing those things manually. As you see on the right-hand side of the screen, there's something like 13,000 appointments a year that were rescheduled. Just imagine the labor hours for that one stat alone. So we've built a really smart scheduling platform that talks to the parents, talks to the provider of all these different therapies, schedules that through Cortica, and then make sure the insurance companies are in the loop and approve of each of those treatments. When things change on either one of those ends, the system is able to respond to those things, reschedule and resort the child's care plan. This, of course, is a challenging number of use cases with many different users that, again, we had to consider the different types of families and the different contexts those families may be living in to make sure that this supports them well. So a couple quick wins here, I suppose, is it took about 7 minutes to onboard a client before the product was released. It takes about 2 minutes now. So you can imagine more clients can get into the system, which means more care for the children. And then what used to be the case of a person scheduling these things would have to go from 6 different platforms to get this information into the system. They now only live in one platform. So we've seen a total of 60% efficiency gain just in using this single tool to manage all of those different edges. And I think that's it. Yep, that's it. Thank you guys for your time. Thanks for giving us some space and including us in the conversation.